Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. I'm Julie, your host, and I'm so delighted you could join us this week. My intention in doing this show is to provide information, insight, and comfort to people all around the world by helping to answer life's unanswerable questions. And we have a special show this week, and we've got Renee and Anthony with us, and they are channelers and spiritual teachers and have all these skill sets that are going to be right up your alley, and you guys are going to love talking with them. And of course, you know, me being an information suck, I have a bazillion questions for them. So welcome, you guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, we're excited to be here. We love your show.
Well, thanks. I'm delighted to have you. Tell me about you. How did you guys get into this spiritual space? I always say I'm not a psychic who's had dead people chasing her since childhood, or if I did, I didn't know it, let alone what I would have done with that information. So did you have spirits chasing you in childhood? How did you guys get into this whole, you call yourselves modern mystics? How did that come about?
You want to start?
Well, I think for me, when I was a kid, I can't say that I had spirits chasing me. I felt lots of energy. Growing up back east in New York, we lived in a very old house, and there were things there that I could feel, but it didn't make me feel. I wasn't very comfortable, but I kind of just got used to it. But that was just the beginning, and But I grew up normally. I played sports and did all the things that a kid does,
But spirits were knocking.
Yeah, they were always knocking. I just never answered the door.
Yeah, I think they always are, and most people just are not aware unless they're little. Little children are very aware.
Yes.
And then I don't know about you guys, but I find about the age of about 7-ish or so, they've had enough people say, "Oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not real." Yeah. And then they learn to shut it down. But everybody comes in with the ability. Renee, how about you?
I think my early days were really more that feeling of being empathic and feeling everyone's energy, right? And, suddenly feeling the emotions of wanting to break down in tears and didn't know why. And so, I used to take on a lot of people's energy as a child without realizing it. And I also had the sort of intuitive downloads of knowing about a person before they opened their mouth. So, all of these, and I couldn't figure out why. It wasn't psychic in nature. It really was more, I knew their energy, their personalities, their trauma, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't say I squashed it, but I certainly didn't talk about it.
Oh, yeah, because people just think you're weird. I'm like, that's just a weird kid doing that kind of stuff, right?
I think growing up for both of us, we were in that weird category to begin with without mentioning that.
I think my father would always say, "Anthony, you're weird." I'm like, "Dad, I know."
Oh, yeah.
I was always the weird one in the family. So I should mention too, Renee and I actually grew up in the same town right around the corner from each other. But we'll get to that too.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. Well, you like to say when I was doing my research to prepare for today, I saw that you say that you're modern mystics who bridge science and spirituality. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. I think when all of this first started, for many channelers where they're opening up to the universe, initially you don't realize you're opening up to the universe, do you? I mean, it's like, oh, I have a guide or I have a set of guides, and you're trying to figure out what that means. And some of the stuff that comes through is so out there, right? It's so out there at first. You have to question everything that's going on. So initially, when we first opened up, we had gods and goddesses coming through from across cultures. We had, galactic energies. What does that mean? We had the angelic realm. We had all of these energies coming through. And I think for both of us, me being grounded in tech and Anthony being grounded in science, we're like, we're not doing any of this. This is religious stuff. These angels thing, they belong to the to the Catholics over there. I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I think initially that made us retreat and not really want to do this because we couldn't really understand initially what was going on, like a lot of channelers who open up. So initially we squashed it, we pushed it away. And then I would say we dabbled and played for a few years, channeling all of these different energies and trying to learn discernment, what we were truly aligned with. And then I think the science started coming in because, a lot of the guides that would come through would talk about this quantum consciousness. And we started learning about the biofield before I had even read about the biofield, right? So then I would say maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, our guides came through and said, you know why you're here? You're here to bridge science and spirituality. You're not here just to teach about spirituality in a vacuum over here. And, science is over here. You're really to bring them together and to let people know that they're cut from the same mold. So I think I would say that it was a journey to get there. It wasn't initial from the beginning. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it was. By profession, I'm a speech and language pathologist, pediatric, and I work with very young children who have speech and language disorders and all different types of difficulties, linguistically, cognitively, socially. And so this was quite an eye-opener for me because I am founded in pathology, diseases that cause difficulties in one's ability to communicate. And when spirit started coming through, it was quite an eye-opener. I had, before all of this had happened, I was going through terrible neuropathic pain throughout my entire mouth, hard palate, soft palate, gums everywhere in my throat. And the moment that, and it was just a very long, just a terrible process. And I had gone through that for years.
This was pre-Kundalini awakening.
Yeah. Pre-Kundalini, yeah. Once spirit came through, all of the pain just went when they were able to speak through me. And I have just a little bit of the residue still, but not like before. It really
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
Think of it like a dam that's building up and resist, the Buddhists say what you resist persists.
Yeah.
So it was that resistance built up like a dam. And then the moment the surrender happens, right, which every sage, mage, and spiritual teacher across cultures and religions and belief systems all talk about, then the dam burst out, right? And suddenly everything got integrated.
Yeah, interesting. I went through the same thing in that I resisted doing this work and putting myself out there. And my main spirit guide's a dead pope named Clement VI. Then he showed up. The first time he showed up in his whole Pope outfit, the hat, the whole 9 yards. And I'm 12 years Catholic school girl. I knew it was Pope. I had no clue who it was. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. I said, okay, I never heard of a Pope Clement. Kind of like, really? And he said, yeah, I was number 6. I said, okay, great. How can I help you? And he said, you're supposed to teach the masses what happens when somebody dies because everybody's so afraid. And it's been bastardized throughout the generations. And you're supposed to teach the world what happens when when somebody dies. And I said, I'm not doing that. I'm a businesswoman. People will think I'm nuts.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. Go ahead and do that. And when I got I was with my mentor. And when I got in the car to leave, just for kicks, I did an internet search on him. Come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague. And he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. Wow. And I thought, girl, you can't make that up. So here I am all these years later. And it took golden ovary courage. Guys have breast balls, Anthony, and girls have golden ovaries. So it took golden ovary courage for me to put myself out there. Yes. And, and here we are all these years later.
No, that's really great, Julie, because I feel, I resonate so much with your story because I came out of tech and occasionally still do consulting in that area. And I was terrified. I still don't post about what we do on my main Facebook page, right? There's a little bit, I wouldn't say fear. There's still a little bit of resistance for how what we do will be translated.
How long did it take you before you decided to plunge all the way before making that transition all the way over?
Two things were catalysts for me. Number one was I was sitting in church on a Sunday. My husband and son were on either side of me. And from the pulpit, the priest says, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody could tell us if we're really greeted by angels and our loved ones, deceased loved ones, and escorted to heaven? And I'm getting elbowed because that's what my 12 phases of transition is. It's a configuration of angels and deceased loved ones. And I can scan anybody anywhere in the world and immediately tell you how close to death they are and communicate with them and all of that. So that was the first thing. And I'm like, okay, God, really? From the pulpit in the middle of church, you're giving me grief about this? That was the first thing. The second thing was I was really afraid, like what you were talking about, Renee, to put myself out there with a website, on my social media, all of that. And I was lecturing for business in Austin, Texas, at this huge conference, all C-suite executives, mostly male. I can't finish my talk. This guy comes up to me. He's got his iPad open. He's got AskJulieRyan.com on it. I'm thinking, oh, here we go. I'm just going to get pummeled by this guy. And he said, is this you? And I said, well, I wanted to say, yeah, it's my picture. I said, yes, it is. I'm thinking, okay, brace yourself. And he said, I'm interested in learning more. Can we sit together at lunch? And I said, sure. And then I thought, oh, again, prepare yourself. You're probably going to be nauseous during lunch. So we were in a hotel ballroom and there was a table of 8. They have the circular tables of 8. And it was 7 male C-suite level executives from tech, mostly, Austin, and me. And we talked about woo-woo the whole time. They didn't care what I talked about in my talk. I mean, they cared, but they didn't want to talk about what I'd lectured about. They wanted to talk about woo-woo stuff. And so that really got me to the place where I believed that was a sign going, give it up. This is where you're being led, follow it, jump in with both feet. And I did. And that was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And the interesting thing about this too, that I can tell you both is being business people and in the sciences, this is the first thing I've ever done without a business plan, without looking at measurables, any of that. I'm being led. People say, well, where do you expect to be? I'm going, I don't know. I just go where I'm led. And it's a blast. It is the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah, it's interesting because our guides do just say to trust and everything's taken care of. And we're like, well, what does that mean? Everything's taken care of.
Like everything's fine. Don't worry.
Stay in the present moment.
Yeah.
Stay in the moment. And then, I still got a mortgage I got to pay. And I still got to pay the electric bill and stuff. And what I have found is that where I'm led, and I talk to my Pope Clement all the time, and I'll tell him reasons why I can't do something, especially early on. And he treats me like a Nike ad, and he'll just say, yeah, just do it. And then I'll get through the fear and I'll do it. And then it will be it'll flourish. So I think the key is to be able to differentiate between really what's a rational fear and what's an irrational fear. And most fears are irrational. And so if we can lessen that fear enough and take action, then we're shown the way, we're led in that.
And also that, the fear in our field, in our biofield, right? As as an intuitive, right, in this area, it's that, that built up of blockage over time leads to disease if not attended to. So we want that free-flowing energy of, that access to the all, right? And not bottling everything in, which is blocking all of our chakras. And, it's just unhealthy overall. So I think getting out of the fear grid and plugging into the trust, love, connection, unity, consciousness grid is really what's key for vitality in our health.
Oh, there's always an emotional component. Most of the work I do is medical related, energy healing and medical intuition stuff. And there's always an emotional component in place before any kind of disease or illness or sickness sets in 100% of the time. And to your point, Renee, those blocks, I go for where did the first block originate? Because these other ones pile on top of it, the energy, and then it causes a blowout in the what I call the energy field membrane, allows energy leaks. Body's not working on full power. That's always in place before any kind of illness or disease sets in. Yeah. So how did you guys finally meet if you grew up a block away from each other?
Well, we went off and married different people. This was our first chapter. He lived in, the Bronx, right? And outer New York. And I lived in 11 countries all over the world. I married a South African and lived in England, Turkey, South Africa, lived in the Middle East, traveled around the world. And then we're not going to say what number reunion it was, but let's just say a numbered reunion. And we met there and we had remembered each other, but we hadn't really, we were both divorced at that point.
So you went to high school together?
Yeah, we went to high school together.
We were in the same homeroom together too.
Yeah. So, we went off on, completely different paths initially, and I always thought if we had met earlier, I'm not sure, right, if we would have stayed together. It's hard to know. I mean, we're both multicultural. Anthony loves languages. I love languages and cultures. We both embrace and love all aspects of, multi-world travel. I mean, I run a travel magazine, right, as well. And so I think, who knows, right? But clearly we're meant to have found each other at some juncture in this life and do this work together. It's pretty obvious to us. Yeah.
So you just saw each other at the high school reunion and said, oh, hey, babe, how you been for the last however many years?
Actually, I asked my
friend, how did that come about?
I asked a good friend of mine, I said, who is that?
She's beautiful.
Yeah. I had tight jeans that I picked up in Beverly Hills. They had kind of this, they were artistic, very Romanesque jeans with some power boots on, right? And I think he was just kind of looking at that more than looking at me.
So you started talking and then you got together. And then when did you figure out you were both interested in spirituality, or did you develop that at the same time once you were a couple?
Oh, no, you have no idea. This is how crazy it is. So, I was back as I was there for a business trip. I wasn't going to go to this reunion. And then, this is where serendipity of the universe comes together. I had a potential client who said, I want to fly you to New York, and then I'm going to put you, pick me up in a limo in New York to, for a meeting in upstate New York. What business in tech does meetings in upstate New York an hour from the Adirondacks? I mean, it just doesn't happen. Austin, Denver, right? Silicon Valley, Seattle, but not upstate New York. So not only were they paying my way there, having a limo pick me up, but paying double my day rate. Also, I could be in upstate New York at the same time of the reunion. I mean, okay, it was like throwing me into the woods, like you needed to be there. And so, it was clearly meant to be that we were supposed to meet up. And so I didn't have a car for that. I didn't rent a car because of the situation. So after the first night, we were all chatting and I said, can anyone give me a ride to my sister's house? And Anthony, with his Camaro, Italian Camaro, said, I'll drop you off.
I always wanted a Camaro.
There you go.
I had to try one. Yeah. It didn't last long, but it was fun.
And so guess what his first line was to me the moment we were alone and not in a group of people? The very first line.
What was
it? No clue.
Do you believe in God?
Oh,
you did. And I thought, okay, this guy's a crazy religious freak.
With a Camaro.
With a Camaro. Let's just get me to my sister's place and, do that check mark again. My grandfather always said to stay away from crazy Italians. So, dropped me off at my sister's place and we spoke in the car like kids do, right? Until about 4 or 5 in the morning, and the rest is just history. And, it wasn't about God. It really was about this universal source and consciousness and this connectedness. But that's not what.
But I wasn't open at the time.
Yeah, he wasn't open.
I had just gone through a terrible
divorce.
Not so much divorce, but a couple of years of this Kundalini awakening in the Bronx, which is not a good place to have a Kundalini awakening in the Bronx.
This sounds like a Woody Allen movie.
Right.
Kundalini awakening in the Bronx.
You don't want to.
We always joke,
it's
right?
a tough awakening.
We joke about that. If you're going to have a Kundalini awakening and you go to the Bronx, they're going to put you on morphine.
Yes, and they
whatever. If it happens where we live in Marin, they'll say, oh, here's the meditation studio over in the ER, and would you like some chamomile tea while you're waiting?
Right. So
hilarious. All right. So you guys then got together. You lived in different parts of the country and you got together. And then once you were together, how'd you figure out that you were doing this spiritual thing? Did one of you were you the catalyst, or did you, Renee, that was you? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I was definitely the catalyst.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was just, having fun. And when people came over, because the guides would come through every night, like they still do. And it was almost like I was in practice, that we were in practice
in
reading.
School.
It was like we were in school. I mean, it got to the point where one time I was, they would come through and I couldn't move. And the guides would say, okay, now, Renee, you're going to teach them how to walk. And she had to lift me and I had to walk. I looked like a robot because I couldn't walk.
Because it's full embodied channeling.
Yeah.
So when it initially happened, we hadn't heard of Edgar Cayce at the time. We didn't know who he was. And of course, read about every single channeler on the planet within the first 2 years. And, back in the early days of channeling, especially for the rare type of channeling, the full embodied piece of it, you couldn't walk. You were kind of frozen. You had to be in the dark. And that was similar to us. We had to be in the dark, no lights on, no noise. I couldn't sneeze. I would light a candle. I don't know why it didn't occur to me to record things in the early days, but we didn't. I would write everything down in the dark.
We did a little bit.
Yeah. But the clarity of the transmission was very murky at first until until the antennas got clear and that alignment happened. And so that occurred, I would say, over a period of 3 to 5 years. It wasn't an overnight thing.
No.
It's not like suddenly, oh, here's spirit and go out to the world and teach. It was more like, here's spirit. And we're like, I'm not sure we want this.
I couldn't control any of it. It was, couldn't control it. I mean, right now I can see them knocking on they don't leave me alone sometimes. They're like, I'm like, I hear you guys. I couldn't go into a restaurant. I'd have to go in and come back out and go in because the energy was just so strong for me. And it took a lot of time and a lot of practice
to integrate,
a lot of crying, everything as a child that I had gotten rid of, I thought was gone. It all came back again. All of the pictures, all of these beings, they all came back again. And I had to become accustomed to what they look like, why they're here. And they were literally teaching me how to understand who I am in this lifetime so that Renee and I could do this for other people as well.
And I also think I would add to that to go through the full spectrum. And I know, Julie, we were all talking about this before, before the program started, about that full spectrum that, again, every single sage, mage, and spiritual teacher speaks about, that there really is no evil or dark energies, that we are the full spectrum of light, right? That's who we are as energy beings. And I think being afraid of that full spectrum, right? Sometimes our guides will say, well, I'd say in the early days, well, if it looks scary, sweetheart, tell it to go away. We don't want to be channeling dark energies. And they were literally preparing us to understand, well, that's just a shadow of yourself. It's an aspect of yourself. And it's nothing to be afraid of. But when you fear it and you resist it, you're literally bringing that into your field. So, that's been a very long process for us both to learn about that. And, for me, I don't want to see those energies. I hear them, I feel them, and I sense them. And Anthony gets visions. You really get the whole spectrum.
Yeah, I see them all.
He
for everything
sees,
that
hears
they are.
everything.
I always say the good, the bad, and the ugly. They're all there, but they're all beings. They're just light beings, and they're fine. The quantum part of it was, I don't know how far it was. They had said, listen, you guys are going to be connecting science and spirituality together. And they said, we need you to know about quantum. I said, I know nothing about quantum. I know nothing. So they said, get a book. Get a book. So I got the first book, Quantum Physics for Dummies. And so that's how it started. So I had to start reading about quantum and quantum mechanics and quantum physics and all of this stuff, so I could try to understand when they came through and they would start talking about vibrations and frequencies. I could understand it a little bit better, and string theory and all these other things.
But the interesting thing is that books started showing up on our doorstep, because I run a travel magazine. People want us to review things. So authors are always, publishing houses are always sending us books to review. And sometimes we ordered them and expressed, interest in them. And other times we didn't. They would just show up. And it's funny because I'm the one who ended up getting more interested in the quantum piece of it. And, as of today, probably have read, 40 books on quantum, various aspects of quantum. And the books would come in, and it was funny because it was almost as if the universe was sending us these books. So a whole box of books I'd go through and I'm like, okay, shaman, that's for me. The quantum, that's for me. The ancient sages, mages, and saints, that's for Anthony. So we would parse these things out, right? Just simply from the energies that would come through.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I know, work together and you channel together. And I think everybody channels. I think every book that's been written, every song, every screenplay, everything's channeled. And I know in my books, there are times when I'll write things and I'll go back and read it later and I go, wow, that's pretty good. I don't even remember writing that. Seriously. And that's even before it gets to my editor. I was like, wow. Okay. So Paul McCartney, Let It Be. He dreamt that everything. And so how did you discover that working together really was a way for you to convey the messages of spirit? You talk about your 3-dimensional triangle and your divine figure 8. Can you tell us about that and tell us how that came to be and what does it mean and what are the benefits of it?
It's really important. It's a great question. Actually, no one's asked that question, but it's critical to the work that we do.
I don't know how that 3-dimensional triangle came. They would say we come through her. They always say we have to come through her first, or we'll take hold of her auric field.
So they say, our guides will say that it enters through my crown chakra, comes through, forms this kind of sacred geometric shape, right? Because if you think about sacred geometry, which we've also learned a lot about in this process, our guides will say the sacred 3 is the sacred number of this universe, not every universe, but this universe. Mm-hmm. So that's the meaning of the 3. And if you think about it, and I have a lovely, 6-slide representation of all the triangles across every culture, right? So obviously in Christianity, we know what it is, right? But in all the other aspects, there's Vishnu and, there's the Platonic solids. There's all of these different things across cultures. So that's the 3. The figure 8 is really the infinity.
They would show this.
Yeah, it's the infinity. So if you imagine the energies coming through here and it's working through both of us, that is the balance back and forth, the divine feminine and divine masculine. And so that's the most important piece of our work. I really do believe that we're still trying to discern exactly the significance of it. I mean, obviously, intellectually, we know the world needs more balance of yin and yang, right? We know that, but I think that that's coming through. Our guides really want us to demonstrate the importance of that. Do you want to any other downloads that you have about that?
Yeah, that's because now primarily the guides that we channel are Yeshua energy and Miriam, Magdalene. And there you have the balance again of divine feminine, divine masculine coming together, as they always say, as one. And they want to demonstrate that oneness of coming together, that in truth, there is no masculine and there's no feminine, but they want us to know that you are one with source all the time, no matter what. But you just have this perception of masculine and feminine, but you can use that to balance yourself as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it depends on the group that we work with. Sometimes they will use the teaching of the yin and yang and the balance of the masculine and feminine. If the group is ready to hear a more advanced message, they will really speak to the point that there is no masculine.
They'll get into the real quantum aspect of who we are as light beings.
I have a class that I teach called Angelic Attendant Training, and it's quarterly, and I teach people from all over the world how to do all the stuff that I learned to do. And my January class just ended, and I had a student who's a quantum physicist who teaches at Oxford University in England. And it was fascinating hearing her take on things. And she said that the quantum physicists believe that everything comes from one cell. Everything is all connected in one cell. And I said, well, that's just another name for source. It's all energy. It's all the same. You're a drop of water. You drop yourself into the Pacific Ocean. You are the Pacific Ocean, right? Same kind of a concept. So I find it interesting with the sacred geometry because a lot of people don't know, but for instance, our capital, Washington, D.C., here in the U.S., is all laid out in a grid of sacred geometry. Yep. And Benjamin Franklin and a lot of the founders of the United States of America were all very much into that. Our currency has sacred geometry on it. The sacred geometry of the pyramids that are all over the world. And those are not only energy generators from a healing perspective, but also from a communication perspective, because there's no way that they're all lined up latitudinally and longitudinally how they are. Mm-hmm. And still with those pyramids, you think, how did they get those big old stones to build those things without, we would have trouble building it with our modern technology. How did they do that 10,000 years ago? Right. Was that other beings coming in and helping? Was it that they were channeling some kind of Herculean energy that was giving them the power to be able to move those things? I just think it's a wonderful discussion to have. So let's talk about your channeling for a minute. For people who are watching and listening, what is channeling? What do you consider channeling to be?
I think what you had mentioned earlier, I think everybody channels in his and her own way. People channel through art, through music, through dance, through literature.
Spielberg,
film.
Yeah, think about, the film, all of this stuff, right, is channel. They made
Einstein is a perfect example of a channeler. Example. He would sit in his rocking chair, fall asleep, and I think stuff would come to him. And so for me, channeling because I'm a full embodied channeler, I allow my auric field to be open to the universe itself, and energy forms will come and they will
take hold.
As they say, they will electrify themselves more so that they can come forth. And then when they leave, they'll say, we are going to allow Anthony's light to shine a little bit brighter now.
So in the early days, we thought that they kind of plugged in. Well, they do in a way. They plug into the auric field, but we really thought, we never wanted to use the word possess because it freaks people out, but really embraces, takes hold of the field, and then they would leave, right? Or so we thought, right, that they would leave. And so we always use this language that, our guides are leaving now. But then one day, because we we just finished our first channel book, though we haven't figured out how we're going to publish it yet. So maybe we can talk about that later. But, there was one point where, can't remember what chapter it was, but as the Magdalene energy was leaving, right, this was about a year ago, maybe, or 8 months ago, Anthony came out of trance and he said, "Oh my God, what they've actually showed me, they don't leave at all. What they do, it's like a Christmas tree light, right?" And so you imagine that all the lights are, different colors or whatever, and they're brighter. They all come in as a collective consciousness, and I'm part of it.
Yeah.
Like I'm part of all these bulbs on a tree. And then what they do is they dim their lights and retract, and then the light bulb of Anthony shines brighter and gets individualized, if you like, and comes through. And that's how we channel the so-called perceived energies of Magdalene and Yeshua. And we say perceived because they always say we are not one. You think of us as Yeshua because that's who I was when I walked the earth plane 2,000 years ago, but I'm not one, you're not one. None of us are.
The
one.
interesting
we're
thing,
all unified.
When they first came through, they would say, "We are no different than you. We are you."
Yeah.
And they still say exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They would always say, "We're in your most intimate settings." And we're like, "Really? What does that mean?" That's because they never leave. Because we never leave.
Yeah.
We're here. This is it. We're always connected.
That's back to the quantum physicist who said that, we are one, and yet we're all at the same time, right? The drop in the ocean, but also the ocean. So it really does go back to the science of being integrated and part of that one cell.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and for those who are listening and watching that don't know who Yeshua is, that's another name for Jesus, or the Christ consciousness.
Right.
Is what that is. And Mary Magdalene hangs around me a lot too, but she always has a gaggle of women with her. She's always got 2 or 3 other women with her, which is interesting. And, it's just what she does. And I asked her one time, I said, "Why are you around me?" And she said, "Because you have the potential to be persecuted when you go public with all of this. And like I was, for thousands of years and still is in a lot of the holy texts of the Christian faith, which is just total nonsense. It's just used to control the masses, right? It's all about the fear, eliciting fear and all of that. So I know you guys channel different entities. Do you believe that they come through so that it's easier for us to have a frame of reference in our human understanding of this? Because spirit, to me, doesn't have a gender. Spirit's just energy. But when we refer to spirit like Mary Magdalene, well, in our frame of reference, Mary Magdalene is a feminine name. So we would refer to the spirit Mary Magdalene as a her or a, she. Right. And do you find that spirits come through in different people, Einstein, that lived, so that it's easier for us to comprehend them in that context? What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. I mean, they'll say all the time that, the human understanding of the world, or our ability to process and make sense of things, is very linear. So in a linear worldview, how else do you explain it, right? Linear is all about polarities, masculine, feminine, black, white. I mean, our whole world is structured on polarities, which is really, unfortunately, it could be a beautiful spectrum of things. Like, wow, humanity comes in a million different cultures and colors and belief systems. And how amazing is that? And of course, we turned it around and said, no, let's divide ourselves, right? And so, that's the polarity of the linear way of thinking. And so it's the way we learn. It's the way that we process things. And so our guides will say, okay, Magdalene's here, he, she, it, they. Well, sometimes she'll say, I'm here. Sometimes the energy will use the language we.
Yeah.
And then, Yeshua has said, I'm not really a he or a she or an it. I'm kind of a they. and I'm multiple frequencies, and my soul is made of thousands of frequencies, just as your soul is made of thousands of frequencies. So I think absolutely that's true. It's a way for us to understand. And even to the point of when we talk about past lives, in a quantum worldview, there is no past lives, right? Everything is now. And so sometimes they'll use language like, if you choose to say that it's from a past life, you can, if that makes it easier for you to process it. But really what it is another life or human experience or other being experience, right, on another plane and dimension is really what it is. And they're all happening simultaneously, which is just way too woo-woo, right, for us to, even those of us in the spiritual circles, it's too woo-woo for us to understand. So I think it's easier for us to think, even in the healing work we do, it's better for us to say, yes, the healing happens ancestral, backwards, forwards, it happens to us, it happens in all directions, because it's easier for people to get their heads around, and I would say some of the quantum ways that our guides would use language is like, when you heal yourself in this dimension, you're healing yourself and affecting that ripple effect in every other dimension. So we perceive it as past lives or ancestral healing, but it's really all happening simultaneously. Does that kind of make sense in the context of what you were asking?
It does. And I think the multiple reality question is really baffling to we humans because they're all happening concurrently. I can do past lives. I do past life scans. I don't do the hypnotist thing. I envision myself in this endless hallway. And it's interesting, sacred geometry. There are these big squares that line the walls vertically and horizontally in perfect columns. And they're about 12-inch by 12-inch each square, as far as the eye can see, and even farther from what I can't see. And then I'll ask a question like, do Anthony and Renee have any past lives together? And the lives that are represented by those mirrors come out from the wall as if they're on a hydraulic arm. And then I'll say, show me the one that correlates the most. That one will come out the farthest. I'll get myself in front of it, envision walking into it. And I'm given where it was, when it was, what you were doing, what some of the things are that happened. So I do it that way because when I ask what's the most prevalent or what's the one that makes the most sense, what resonates the most, we just cut to the chase and we get all those other lifetimes all rolled up into whichever one makes the most sense. But then when I'm scanning a building and I can see different realities in the building. For instance, in my book, I have a chapter called The Train Wreck. And I was in this office building and there's all these spirits in there, and there had been a train wreck and the building had been used as a temporary morgue at the turn of the 20th century. And so I could see all these spirits, and I mean, it's a riot. And I thought, all right, I'm in this reality. I'm perceiving this other reality. I'm able to communicate with these spirits. And what's up with that? But I think that's what happens. Like Anthony, you said you grew up in an old house and you could feel other spirits there. Well, there are endless stories. Every antebellum home I go in here, I live in the Deep South. I always ask, got any good ghost stories? Stuff happened. They all do. You're like, oh, yeah, well, I don't know about that. I was in Austin, that same trip. I guess it was a big trip for me. I was in a historic hotel called the Driscoll. And
I love the Driscoll.
The Driscoll's fabulous. Yeah. Historic. And I was taking a tour, and I'm upstairs outside of the ballrooms with the little bellman who's given me the tour, and I'm smelling cigar smoke. And I thought, there is no way they're going to let somebody smoke inside this hotel or any hotel, let alone a cigar. So I see Colonel Driscoll walking through this lobby area with his cigar. So the cigar smoke was turn on your radar, Ryan, because stuff's going on here. And And so I saw that. I saw some other things. One of my favorite parts of that story was I went in one of the ballrooms, and it has these huge gold leaf mirrors, probably 8 of them in one of the upstairs ballrooms. And this little bellman said, yeah, we think that was from Emperor Maximilian's palace from Mexico City. And we think there's like a cameo carved into the wood on the top of all the mirrors. And he said, and we think that was his wife, Carlotta. Well, I'm hearing that's not Carlotta. That's his girlfriend, his mistress, Jocinda. And I'm thinking, okay. So I asked him if he knew anything about Jocinda. No, he didn't. And so I just called them both in. I called Jocinda and Carlotta in. I said, who is that on the cameo? And Jocinda said, it was me. And I said, okay, great. And so we were doing that. Long story short, I researched it later. There's all this historical information about Jocinda being the mistress of Emperor Maximilian. I didn't know there ever was an Emperor Maximilian, let alone that he had a girlfriend named Jocinda. But they both showed up in their hoop skirts, in their jewels. I mean, they were buddies. It was wild. So that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Yeah, we've had our, we were supposed to be reviewing, we didn't know it was a haunted hotel. It was just set up because we do a lot, because of the travel magazine, we get invited to review hotels all the time. And a lot of them are very upscale and some are unique, independent properties. And this one had a little Ghostbuster on the window, and we're like, huh. And we didn't end up staying there actually. But when Anthony had walked in, because the owner happened, not the owner, I think it was one of the managers happened to be there. And she's like, oh, I'm never here normally. She said, I can give you a tour of the place. And Anthony was sitting there thinking, haunted, really? I don't feel a thing, right? Because we were just standing in the hallway. And then suddenly we walked into the first room. Do you remember? And you felt like you were hit by a bunch of bees.
She said, oh, we have a few ghosts. I'm like, no, you have like thousands of energies here.
Well, actually, she said, we have a ghost. His name is whatever. And Anthony's like, no, it's not one ghost.
Because this one hotel was used during, I think, World War I, where there were a lot of soldiers that were there to die.
It was like an infirmary. It was really the last step where people went. So, walking down the hallway, you could feel and see a lot of these energies just kind of walking past.
It was weird.
And we've had that a lot. There's another hotel that's closed now in Calistoga. And remember, we were walking past the windows and you were seeing all the energies of, it's been shut down for a while, but lots and lots of stories about the ghosts who frequent the walls. So we tend not to kind of hang out in those places much.
But they are fun.
They are really fun. And I'm unlike you, Anthony. I turn my abilities on and off at will. Yeah. So I go in places. I'm just a regular humanoid, just doing my thing. And, and if I'm prompted, like I'm smelling cigar smoke where I know it's not supposed to be, that's my cue to turn on my radar and see what's going on.
Well, I think that's true. I can do that now before.
Yeah. Well, and back to that, I think that we go through kind of a marinating system, if you will, where we can reach higher and higher and higher frequencies and higher vibrational levels. And I use analogies a lot to give our human minds a frame of reference for this woo-woo stuff. But I like to use the analogy of, if you don't know how to swim, you're not going to dive into the 12-foot portion of a pool. You're going to go into the shallow end, and then you're going to wade up to your waist and then your shoulders, and you're going to learn how to tread water. You're going to learn how to swim, and then you'll dive in to the deep end. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with this. And with practice, people continue to get better and better and better. I've been doing this medical intuitive stuff for 30 years, not publicly, not as a business, except the last 5 or 6, but certainly over that time, I see new healings happen all the time. I still see new healings all the time. And it's so much fun because it appeals to my inventor brain. I'm going, oh, cool. Look at this. How's this working? Oh, yeah. Wow. And it's always something new, which makes it really fun and really exciting. back to the multiple realities happening concurrently. Are all realities, do you think, happening all at the same time? Or do you think it's just within a certain time frame? Like we're going to go from the 1600s to the 2000s, and those are happening like in one swirl. And then the ones that are BC to whatever are happening in another swirl. And how do we focus on accessing the different realities? How can somebody that's not trained to do this, if they're interested, is there a way for them to be able to focus on that and pull that up?
Our guides trying to come through?
Well, yeah, they're always coming
through.
Because
I'm feeling like they're trying to come through right now.
What they show me are literally multiple worlds, and just it's like layered.
Mm-hmm.
All of these worlds are a vibration, and we are like our hair. All of our hair are different frequencies that
make up a particular vibration,
that enter into a vibration and have an experience. They'll say there is no good or bad experience. You're just here to have an experience. You decide on the perception of it.
Yeah.
And that's what it really is. They'll say you are multi-dimensional beings having a multi-dimensional realities all at the same time. You may not know it, but this is what's happening. But you have the ability through your own intentions to change these multiple realities whenever you choose.
Which is how healing happens, right?
Yes, that's how healing happens.
As Yeshua has always told us.
He would say, I didn't heal anybody.
Yeah, over 2,000 years ago, his ability was to be able to go into that original blueprint,
right?
Speak to the soul and say, hey, soul, I'm communicating with you. Let's have a frequency match, right? And you have this frequency match. And what ultimately happens with that frequency match is the soul speaks to the soul and decides it's going to heal itself.
Yeah.
So, we've always been told that by, the guides that we channel, particularly Yeshua, who will always say, and this too, as a healer, you're the vessel, right? You're not the one doing the healing.
Well, and I always use the example of nobody heals anybody else. We only heal ourselves. No doctor, no medical provider, no healer, no shaman, no anybody. Because if you think about it, at the end of a surgical procedure, how does the surgeon close the wound? With sutures and staples. The surgeon doesn't make the patient's skin grow back. The patient makes their own skin grow back. And I think that's just one example of the healing. How is it that a surgeon has two patients back to back, same procedure, both healthy? One heals easily and quickly, the other one doesn't. Well, that's that patient's spirit's prerogative to utilize the healing in a way that's going to help them experience and explore whatever it is they want to experience and explore at this time. And I completely agree with you about in the spirit world, no right or wrong, no good or bad, and it's all our perspective. And our spirit expands out from that. And when we expand is in physical form, because what I get in heaven is that and heaven is another reality. That is how we've been taught, as a frame of reference, and that they just think of something and they're immediately doing it, or it materializes or whatever. There's no lag time in the manifestation. So interesting. Do you believe that there's really just one truth across all I know you've studied lots of religions and cultures. Is there like follow the golden rule, treat your neighbor as you want to be treated yourself? Do you find that there's just like one basic truth, or is there a kind of a, if you took an amalgam of all different religions and cultures, are there different variables that are all the same? Are there different points that are all the same? Perhaps they're just said in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely accurate that they're said in a different way. I mean, I think the one consistent one that you hear over and over is be in the present moment, because in that present moment, you can be of gratitude and be of love, right? And that keeps you out of the fear grid, because fear doesn't serve us. So that's one. I think Another consistent thread, again, across all cultures is the surrender into your own being, surrender into trust, have faith, or, whatever you want to call it, into something bigger than yourself. And that lens, that really is a really great segue into contribution and service. So, these are the things that are kind of beyond the ego self. Our guides like to call it the divine ego, which is really the high heart chakra. So it's kind of really tapping into all of these aspects that allow us to surrender into the oneness of being and surrender into the universal consciousness.
I think the one truth that they always talk about is that you are love.
Yeah.
You are light. You are love. And always remember that, and that there is no separation between you and source, and that you have everything you could possibly want. You can make it happen. And if you can always remember that you are light and you are love, it will bring you back to who you truly are in this lifetime. And when you do that, you expand. And when you expand into this vibration, you're not only healing yourself, but you're healing everything, all of the energies that you're connected to.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing our
I'm a
guides
changed
are,
man, really, I am.
Yeah.
From living in the Bronx for 20 years.
Oh, that's hilarious.
The other thing that our guides always love to say is that, when you heal yourself, you heal others.
Yes.
When you heal others, you heal yourself. So it's a symbiotic relationship, among each other, and I think that's a really important lesson, because I think people show up and they're like, you're the healer, heal me, do something, get me out of pain, take away my my cancer or whatever. And I think, going back to the present moment of being connected to the here and now, and knowing that, it's really the surrendering into, what did our guide say the other day? We have a friend who sadly did pass away. And he was a spiritual teacher for 30 something years. And he, came up with this very, very obscure stage 4, it wasn't throat cancer, but it was similar, right? It was in the same field. And I remember
lung cancer, I think it was.
It wasn't traditional lung cancer, but it was stage 4 and it was pretty progressive and he didn't last very long. And our guide said to him, or maybe it was Yeshua said, can you find the love in your disease? Can you bring love to the disease? And for whatever reason, his soul decided not to heal himself. I absolutely felt that he, with all of his knowledge and his training and, his ability to really, truly surrender and get that message, he had the ability to. But for whatever reason, his soul decided not to continue perceived living in this vibration, So who knows why the soul decides to continue to do the work here and, do the healing, and who doesn't, it's really, it's not up to us as healers to decide that, though.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes death is the healing.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's important to remember too, because we all decide when we go, where we go, how we go, who's with us or isn't with us when we go. I talk to a lot of people that have guilt because everybody was with grandma for 3 weeks and Aunt Susie was on duty and she got up to get a cup of coffee and grandma slipped away when she was out of the room for 3 minutes. And then Aunt Susie is riddled with grief. And I would say, grandma chose to do that. Talk to any funeral director anywhere in the world and they have endless stories. Talk to any hospice person and they have endless stories about that. We all choose where, how, when, what the circumstances are. One of the things that I really enjoy about your work is you guys have fun doing this, and I do too. And I find that so many spiritual teachers are very serious and they're very, you got to meditate for 5 hours before you can connect with spirit and you have to do it this way and all that. I'm like, no, you don't. Spirit's fun. Spirit's pure joy. I say all spirit knows how to do is send love. Anthony, to your point earlier, I use the analogy of it's like the sun. The sun knows how to do one thing. It knows how to shine, Doesn't care if it's raining where you are, doesn't care if you're inside, outside, whatever. Sun's just going to shine. Same with spirit. Spirit's just going to send love. That's all spirit does. And so oftentimes I'll hear, well, is my dad mad at me because of the way I settled his estate? And I say, that's a human thing. All human emotions stay with the body when somebody dies. Spirit is pure love. So I really appreciate that you guys talk about how it's fun, it's invigorating, it's a blast to do this work. Can you say more about that? How did you come to that realization?
I personally, Julie, I think it's a choice. I mean, I remember when, we had these galactic energies coming through way back when. And I remember just like, getting up on my little prima donna, like, who are these energies and why are you here? And you're super serious anyway, and we're sarcastic and we have fun and we're from New York and, we're not channeling you guys. You're just not fun. I remember saying that you're not fun. You're serious. I feel like it's too intense when you come through. And so we had to teach our guides humor a little bit. And I remember saying one day, if I'm going to continue on this path, I got to have a little fun here because it's way too serious. I'm constantly worried about discernment because I'm the discernment queen, right? Is this a good energy? Is this not a good energy? And I think at some point along the way, we just surrendered into why are we doing what we do? We're here to help people and we're here to bring love to the world. And if you don't do this from a place of inner joy and, love and laughter, then why show up? So I think it was really a choice. Would you not say that? I think it was just, we have to have fun with this. This is who we are. I mean, he's Italian, I'm French, right? We love to hug people. We love to eat food. We love wine. And that goes to your second point of, we are pretty healthy. So, we're not vegans. We are absolutely not vegans, but we are healthy. We believe in sustainability, eating sustainable food, organic wherever you can, supporting local farmers, all of these things. But we eat almost everything. There are certain things that are really not great for the energy or the physical body that we stay clear of, right? The regular suspects. But for the most part, it's a vibration. So when you are one with the food that you're eating, the lifestyle that you're living, and you're connected to that, then suddenly what you perceive to be evil is no longer evil or bad for you. You're just having a different relationship with it. And, that's not to say that you should, be eating processed food and sausages and boxed food, because if you eat from a box, you become a box. So, but
our
guides will say that, you become a box. But I think, it's really that relationship that you have to all of these perceptions that we have, right? And that's what shows up in the world. If you have the intention that this is of love, you're blessing this, we're in this, like, whatever you want to call it, sacred container of love, because our intention is there, then that's the vibration that comes back to you, right?
Well, they would also say, listen, you have to have fun on this journey.
Yeah.
The whole idea is to have fun. And they'll say things like, you can't spell fun, or we can't spell fun without you in the middle.
Yeah, that's a little
They'll
corny.
make these weird little things they'll use memories that I have from, like, the Cat in the Hat, things like that. And they'll say, you see, have fun. They said, because when you're here having this experience, have the best experience you can have and have as much fun as you can, because that's what it's about. Yeah. And so we take a very light aspect to it. When our guides come through at nighttime, they want to test the wine. They want to see what the wine is like. They want to try the food, because it's
a full-bodied experience.
It's an experience for them as well.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship. Yeah. So,
but have fun.
Yeah,
fun
and that's not to say we don't work hard. We work very long hours. We do take our work seriously. We're very committed to community. and our community. I think that's another thing really worth mentioning is, a lot of times people will say, well, what's my soul's purpose? And, what am I supposed to be doing? And, where am I supposed to go? And it's like, well, stay in the resonance field of love and keep connecting to community of like-minded frequencies. So our guides are very fond of saying, if you want your frequency to be higher, right, and to live and from a different place, then you need to frequent the frequencies that you want to become like, right? This is no different than the vortex that Esther and Jerry Hicks talked about for a million years. And Tony Robbins calls it something else, right? The aha breakthrough moments, right? Where you're breaking through this, getting to that sort of next level or the next dimension. That's all this is, right? Who you spend your time with is who you become. So, if you want to, and family's tough. Family's tough.
Well, it's all perspective.
It's all perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
I teach people just come from a place of compassion.
Yeah.
Say, obviously, this person acting like a fool most of the time. This is benefiting him in some way. We don't understand it, but it's what his spirit wants to experience and explore. So it's all beneficial. Well, what a delight you both are. How can people know? How can they know more about you? How can they? I know you do a lot of classes. I know you have books, you have trainings. How can people find you and learn more about you?
Well, first go to our website, which is just www.bluesoulearth.com. And then we also have, free videos on our Blue Soul Earth YouTube channel. So people can go to Blue Soul Earth on YouTube and hit subscribe. It's obviously free. We do have a podcast called Blue Soul Chats, and that's just anchor.fm/Blue Soul Chats. And then we just launched a new platform called Study with Spirit, and that's just studywithspirit.com. And that's all of our, pre-recorded courses on demand that kind of walk you through what we call core courses. It's really foundation courses that's part of what we call your soul's evolution, right? And that's, foundational stuff like how to connect to your guides, manifesting, right? Manifesting through spirit. What does that feel like? What does that look like? We do a whole pretty intensive course on your soul itself. It's called your Soul Ignite. Mm-hmm. And then we have an energy body course as well. So there's lots of things that we keep adding. We're about ready to launch in the next month replays of our sacred geometry with Metatron and Melchizedek energies. We're going to be launching that probably sometime in March. So, that's just another place where people can go and you can register to be part of Study with Spirit without purchasing anything, really. There's some free guided meditations there too. And, and then we just announced and launched something in January called Blue Soul Ignite. And we're very excited about that. That's a membership program, very inexpensive, right? For people to be part of it. And we meet once or twice a month. There's guided meditations, there's energy transmissions, there's live channeling where people can ask questions to the guides. And so that's exciting because we got that idea from our Blue Soul Masters advanced course. And what we saw was the continuity of our people meeting, over and over and over again, and just, doing breakout sessions and breakout rooms and practicing with each other and just being in that resonance field. We remember, it was just like, wow, Ben's channeling already. He's only been doing this with us for 2 months and suddenly he's channeling. So we had all these kind of breakthrough moments with people who were working with us. And we thought, how can we do this on a regular basis and in an inexpensive way, right? But just to bring community together. So, and that's over on the studywithspirit.com page as well. And then lastly, I know there's a lot, we're doing a lot of stuff. And then lastly, and this is for women only, sorry guys, but this is Magdalene Sisters. And this is a sisterhood group once a month as well. It's only, $133 a year. So again, no brainer on price, but again, a community membership thing for women only, although we do bring in Anthony for some live channeling.
You're the guinea pig, Anthony? You're the guinea pig?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Well,
He's very humble with it. He really does a good job because at first it was just sharing among the women. No, Anthony, right? And then we started integrating the live, like I would get the downloads and I would read her channel message for the month. And now we do 2 per month and you'll come and do the live channeling. I mean, it's pretty powerful. But Magdalene comes through and, she is such a force. She's, the best way to describe her is like a female Martin Luther King on steroids. That's who she is. She's political. She wants to ignite women and, get them to speak their power, step into their truth, not have fear. And to your point, when you said, why is Magdalene in your field? Because the potential of the persecution, that's absolutely why she's there, right? I mean, that's who she is. She's here to support women and say, okay, do your work, step into your power, and I'll be here to assist along the way. So everything's at bluesoulearth.com. Basically, that's a good place for everybody to start. bluesoulearth.com and studywithspirit.com. So studywithspirit.com. All the programs that we just spoke about, that's all on studywithspirit.com.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much.
I know
for joining us.
Sorry.
And no, I want you to get that out there. And everybody that's watching and listening, sending you lots of love. Mwah. From Sweet Home, Alabama and California. These guys are in California, and hope you have a great weekend, wonderful week next week. And I'll meet you back here next Thursday. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be sure to follow Julie on Instagram and YouTube at Ask Julie Ryan and like her on Facebook at Ask Julie Ryan. To schedule an appointment or submit a question, please visit AskJulieRyan.com.
This show is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. Please contact a licensed professional. The Ask Julie Ryan Show, Julie Ryan and all parties involved in producing, recording, and distributing it assume no responsibility for listeners' actions based on any information heard on this or any Ask Julie Ryan shows or podcasts.